You are pathetic. Written by an utter fuckwit. I'll put money in your coffee account if you stop writing. Let's start with that. Let's start with the what people think part. So how did that feel, John Goddard, getting those comments?
I just thought that was so funny. For a long time, I didn't have the confidence to say out loud what I wanted to say, or I didn't have confidence to publish any writing or anything like that. Or it's not even that I didn't have the confidence. It's just that I didn't want to be faced with backlash, or I didn't want to... I thought that it was best to keep what I thought to myself. And it just got to a point, and this was only 6 months ago, and I was just like, fuck, I can't keep it in anymore. I just got to say it. I just got to put it all out. And now all I'm doing is writing all this stuff because it just has to, I can't keep it in because it actually is corrosive to your insides if you keep what you want to say in for too long.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in to the Be You Get Paid podcast. My name is Amy Taylor, and I have one goal by being in your ears: to explore what it means to create a life of personal and financial freedom and happiness in a brave new world. A world that many of us may be struggling with at times, but also one that's full of opportunity for those who are open to it. My guests are all walking their talk with this stuff, meaning they're earning money from businesses, brands, and platforms they have built themselves. For most of them, it's usually involved making some unconventional choices and some big, ballsy leaps of faith. And I'll be doing my best to extract the lessons they've learned along the way in the hopes of inspiring you to consider doing similar. Now, this podcast is proudly supported by some very carefully selected partners that I might interrupt the chat with, but I only ever recommend products and services that I am a customer of or user of myself. In other words, stuff I believe is worth taking the time to tell you about. Now, there's definitely a chance you'll hear some grown-up language on this podcast, but most importantly, anything discussed by myself or my guests is personal opinion for conversational and educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial or investment advice. Okay, housekeeping done. Let's get into the good stuff.
My whole message with the tagline of this podcast being freedom and happiness in a brave new world is focusing on the ways that people are making different choices, the way they're thinking in what I'm calling, I guess, a post-COVID world or a post-pandemic world, because so many things have changed. Some people don't seem to want to acknowledge that. You are someone who is nailing what you're referring to as wrongthink, but just channeling your thoughts, your opinions into a platform of questioning thinking, but with satire, comedy, and quite extreme views, which I love everything about all of that. But I wanted to start with something that was a bit different, because I think, certainly from my experience anyway, one of the biggest things that holds most people back from doing anything, whether it be just a goal, a dream, a vision, taking a different path, starting a business, jumping out of a career into a new one, anything that might be a change, the biggest thing that holds people back is the fear of what people think, whether we know it or not. And so I wanted to start with some of the thoughts and reviews from some of your readers at the front of your book, The People's Republic of Victoria. And you let me, we can talk about it afterwards, but they were fascinating, these reviews in the first couple of pages of your book, which we'll link in the show notes. So here's one from Rex Rayner 1. You are pathetic. Then we have one from Clar2. I don't know what that username's all about. Might be a name from overseas or Scandinavia. Anyway, they have written, whoever wrote this drivel should be at the War Crimes Tribunal alongside Ben Roberts-Smith. I don't know who he is, but sounds like a compliment. Then we have one that I really like, written by an utter fuckwit, but with surprising lucidity and elegance of style. That comes from Fact Checker GFM. And I think this one's my favourite, because it could be a typo that you've made when copying and pasting, or it could be their typo. But it starts with, Christ, you're a terrible writer, as well as an awful polemicist. Is that how you say that? Yeah. I'll put money in your coffee account if you stop writing. That comes from TomRay_AU. So it's nice to read out these people's names because they publicly tweeted. I'm assuming it was tweets. They usually delete their accounts or change their handles once they get called out on these kind of comments. But I thought, let's start with that. Let's start with the what people think part, because probably doesn't get a lot worse than that on the internet. And if you are going to put yourself out there on the internet, it's going to happen. It's usually 1% of the feedback we get on the positive stuff that we put out there, but you have to be willing to take it. So how did that feel, John Goddard, getting those comments?
I just thought they were so funny. I loved them. I loved them so much. And then I started, I don't know, I think when I first started putting stuff on the internet, I thought it was funny and I would just repost them. And then I put them together into my like wall of fame. I just kept saving them all into this folder to go and read. And then obviously like opened that book with those. I don't know. I just thought it was funny. I don't know what else to say. I loved it. I loved it. I don't think there's been anyone that has said anything on the internet that has actually made me feel distressed yet.
That's good.
I mean, touch wood. And like all that stuff is funny. So yeah, that's what I think about that.
I'm just adjusting my microphone because I think something's about to fall on it and make lots of noise. We're both as prepared as each other for this one.
Yeah, good.
So yeah, I'm glad you found it funny, because I certainly did. But let's go back. So I know that we had a chat before this and we discussed how you're a lawyer not necessarily by trade, but you studied to be a lawyer, decided you didn't want to go into law, went into real estate, I believe, selling real estate. You're 30 now, is that right? Am I allowed to? Too late.
Yeah, you can say that. That's fine. Done. We're off.
Just to give people a sense of who you are. And because I don't want to use up the time in these podcasts now to sort of go over someone's life history, I've realised that there's probably a lot more meat we can get into about the journey of the new path that you're taking or have taken. Cool. And decided didn't want to be in real estate. You were living in Melbourne, you know, the city globally that was probably seen as was the longest lockdown, and therefore a lot of polarizing opinions, and a lot of your writing has been about, I guess, a fictional character, but your POV as that person if things were taken to the extreme. Is that right? What the book and your writings have kind of been taking inspiration from the lockdowns, and if we fast forward, I think it's 2029, what could the world look like if that all continued?
Yeah, 100%. So I was living in Melbourne up until about a week before the super long lockdown.
Yeah.
And I just saw what was going on. And I was like, there is no way I'm letting this guy lock me in my house for another 6 months.
This guy, Dan Andrews.
Yeah, this guy, Dan Andrews.
The state premier, for those who aren't in Australia. Yep. Yes,
the dictator of the People's Republic of Victoria. And I was just like, fuck this. So I left and had like a couple months off work, and went up to Queensland to live with my family for a bit. And then my wife and I moved to Adelaide because it was open and it was free and it was nice. And I went back to Melbourne a few months ago, and I was walking down Smith Street, and I was just like looking at it, and everyone just looked depressed. I don't know if it was me, if this is just my perspective, but everyone looked depressed. All the buildings are crumbling. And I think there were 5 of us that went out for dinner, and the dinner was like $1,200 or something. It was crazy. And just all of that, I was like,
5 of you?
Yeah, 12. It was a shit dinner. It was the worst dinner I've ever had in my life, at a restaurant that used to be good before the lockdown.
So that's $240 a head for dinner?
Yeah, not a good dinner. Just an average dinner.
I haven't been to Melbourne for a long time, and I won't be going at this rate. Carry on.
Yeah, and that's not alcohol. I think 3 people at that dinner didn't drink. So,
wow. Okay.
Anyway, I had that experience, and then I wrote a tweet that was "Life in the People's Republic of Victoria," and it started off like, you know, I'm looking out the window of the 86 tram, which goes up and down Smith Street, and like there's crumbling buildings or whatever. And that got like shared a lot or whatever. And a lot of people commented on it. Lots of people thought it was funny. And then everyone from Melbourne like lost their mind, being like, how dare you say that Melbourne sucks? Anyway, and so that's what I turned into that graphic novel. I just expanded on that tweet.
So when was that? How long ago was that, the first tweet when you made the observation?
I think that was in April.
Oh, so that, okay.
Of this year or May. It might have been May.
So April this year, I think it was April when we spoke before, you mentioned that's when you kind of started tweeting a bit more. So just for context for anyone, when we get into the building a following or the monetizing a business or a following online, you've gone from, how many followers did you have on Twitter when you made that tweet?
Couple hundred.
And we're now we're recording this. This is so ironic that we're recording this today on the referendum, the yes vote, which has caused a lot of polarized opinions in Australia, but we're recording it that day. You're now sitting at 10.6 thousand, so 10,600 followers on Twitter. So let's start there in terms of the being you part of Be You Get Paid. What happened next?
So that tweet was the first one that got popular. Oh, that one got the first one that got really popular. The one before that got sort of popular, and I was like, oh, well, maybe writing longer stuff on Twitter is actually something that you can do and people like. I wrote something called Australian Civil War when I had like 100 or 200 followers, I think, and that got shared around a little bit. Anyway, and then after that, I just started posting long stories every day, every couple of days. And yeah, I mean, I didn't do anything beyond that. I just wrote a lot. And it resonated with some people, and that it just, I don't know, that's all that happened really.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned to me when we chatted before once that you'd started to get a lot of people DMing you like, here's how you can add this many followers to your account. And, you know, that's what happens when you start getting traction quickly. Just for anyone who, I know there's a lot of people in my audience who was at the starting phase of building something online, and you just suddenly get all the quick fix, which is a theme that I guess runs into some of your writing with society always wanting the quick fixes. It's no different online, right? You suddenly get people telling you, I can give you 20,000 followers overnight. But your view on that was to not take them up on their offer, because why do you think it was that you just kept going and people were resonating?
It's weird. Like, well, I just never bought into any of that stuff. So a lot of people would tell you, you know, like, this is how you game the algorithm, or this is how you get more people to see your stuff. And I just, my experience wasn't in line with what they were saying. They said, this is the way that you get more followers. And I was like, well, no, I get more followers when I write something that's good. And so I just...
Should we just stop there? Let's just stop there for everyone. I will get more followers when I write something that's good. There you go. That's the podcast done. 10 minutes, 38 seconds. Okay, sorry. Carry on.
Done. Pack it up. We're on.
Done.
We're done.
You are welcome, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. Although actually I started writing something last night about, and I don't know where it'll go, but about, whether what, I don't know, I guess what lens or what criteria do you use as something that's a piece of work or a piece of creative work that's good. So I wrote something last week, I think I published it last week, called Lost in the Labyrinth. And I think that's the best thing that I've written during this spate of releasing stuff online. But it didn't get that many likes and it didn't get shared around that much. And so, well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I actually didn't care, because I was like, well, that's actually like my favorite thing that I've written. And I spent like a lot more time on it than I have on anything else. So it's funny, but whereas I can write something in 5 or 10 minutes, it just gets shared a whole lot. If I write something like paying out, you know, whatever I choose to pay out that day, you know.
I've had the same thing happen. You can pour your heart and soul into something for hours and it's like a fart in the wind, for want of a better expression online, or you can just bang out an opinion in a moment of just either a moment of fuck it, let's see where this goes, or a moment of I'm really passionate and I'm just going to throw it out there without really thinking, and it can go gangbusters. It's the internet, right?
Well, yeah, but I think it's dangerous to judge the value of what you do based on how much it gets shared on Twitter, which is why I'm actually trying to do less stuff on Twitter now, because I think, I mean, I like Twitter a lot, but obviously I think the algorithm is focused on a certain type of content, and people go there for a certain type of thing as well. They're not necessarily going there for positivity and, oh, actually, no, I don't want to say that. But, you know, it's just one thing. And so, yeah, I think you've got to have various outlets.
It's interesting that you say that. I wasn't planning on the conversation going this way at all, but someone tweeted the other day, I think it was Peter McCormack in the Bitcoin space, wrote how creators and influencers are being rewarded for driving toxicity and polarity or polarization. And I was like, I had to question that, because I've always had the mentality, especially I guess being in the digital space, that the platforms aren't the problem, it's the people. And so, you know, at the end of the day, we're the humans. Algorithms is machinery. And yes, they're programmed to reward engagement. The problem, I think, is that there's not enough people overriding the negative fear-based content with happy, positive content. Because like you just said, people don't necessarily go to Twitter for that or go to social media for that. But if you look for it, it's there. And so what I'm trying to steer away from now, and I'm as guilty as anyone, gets sucked into these debates, or especially when you're talking about something like Bitcoin, or you're in the space of finance where you don't want to watch the news, but it's the real world. And if you don't acknowledge it, how can you do something about it to put yourself in the best position to survive it? You know, there's plenty of positive stuff out there. The algorithm rewards engagement, but it's up to us to decide what we're talking about that creates engagement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's only going to change, or it's only going to feel like there's more positivity out there if the people who are happy and positive get out there and share it, which is what I'm all about. Is like, if you've got something you're passionate about, I don't care what it is, how niche it might be, but if you're passionate about it, talk about it, put it on social media. That's when you can create a business around it. But if you're just, you know, if no one knows about it, then no one will buy it, read it, watch it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's what I've been struggling with. Or not struggling, but I've looked at some things that I've posted. I'm like, that was just kind of cheap. It was cheap, and I knew that it would get a good reaction. And I honestly actually don't really care if people share my stuff or people follow me. Like, I actually don't. So
that's why it's working.
Well, that's the thing. I just like writing, right? And I write because that's how I think through things. And so if I'm doing that, then it's fine. I don't care all that much. But maybe there is a balance. Like, maybe if my account never grew, then maybe it would be like, oh, I've got to put something out that's like controversial or whatever. But
yeah, and social media is really more just distribution of what you're doing. So where are you writing more now then, if you're not, because you've kind of grown on Twitter, you could absolutely funnel that into something else now, or send the eyeballs to somewhere else. Is it Substack you started writing on now?
Yeah, so I've always had the Substack, but I'm putting more effort into growing that for a few reasons. First one is that, I think it's more geared towards like long form writing and thoughtful content. Second, I want to censorship proof myself. So I have an email list on Substack that I own.
Yeah, very smart.
So I've been growing that. I'm posting on Nostra. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but you know, that like decentralized social
Bitcoin.
media network. Yeah. So I'm trying to do more stuff on that, and I'm trying to do more podcasts. So that's the thing. And I'm trying to do some spaces as well on Twitter. So
I think personally, Twitter or X, I don't think anyone's readjusted to that rebrand yet.
It can't be X. It can't be.
We'll get that. It's especially when the posts were called tweets and now they're posts. It's like, oh, I kind of lost the happy little blue bird, but never mind. I think you're absolutely doing it the right way from a strategy perspective. But let's get back to your style. You know, I love that you've taken these serious topics, forward thinking, but made them funny. You seem to have adjusted a bit of late and, in your words, taken the reins off, because you may or may not be writing under a pen name. That's for people to now be left in the dark about. I'm not going to clarify either way. That's your prerogative. But you know, it's allowed you now, it feels like, from seeing your content recently, that there's even more of you coming through, because it's less satire, more in your face. Like, this is real shit that could happen if we're not careful. And it made me think this morning, actually, I was re-listening to, I was rereading the first half of the People's Republic of Victoria, and I've highlighted a couple of things that jumped out at me that reminded me of a BBC series in the UK that I watched a few years ago called Years and Years. So anyone in the UK or anyone who's seen this series, It was set, I think, in 2030. This is your book's 2029, but in the UK, in Europe, and it touched on all these, a lot of similar sort of threads or societal themes that could play out if we're not careful. And there's a dialogue, which I'm going to go and look it up, the video of the grandmother of this focus, the central family. And she sits at the table one day when everyone's whinging about how the world has gone crazy. And she bangs her fists down, and she just gives the whole family this huge lecture about how we let this happen. We did this. We chose that. And it's brilliant. And it's so true. And I think this, whether it's satirical or I don't care what your style is, but people need to start thinking about the long-term impacts of these short-term decisions, which is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. It's really interesting because I think I got into a discussion about this the other night on a space actually, but I think people, especially in Australia, because that's all I can comment on, the people that I see around me have lost confidence in their ability to have agency over their lives. I see people, and this is just, people I see at work or people I come across in my day-to-day life, they're like, oh, inflation's out of control. Oh my God, another tax. It's really, really hard to feed my family. My business isn't doing well. Why are there so many rules? I don't understand the entire taxation system. All of these things. And they don't even, and then they say, oh, well, what can you do about it? You can't do anything about it because I don't know what it is, but there's something about the Australian psyche that people have been almost beaten into a place where they know that they can't do anything to stop what the government is currently trying to do. Resignation. Yeah, resignation. That's exactly the word for it. And that stresses me out. And I also don't think it has to be that way.
It doesn't. You're absolutely right. But this is what I'm trying to do more of with this podcast. It's like there's people out there and there's choices out there that are right for the time we're living in. But unfortunately, to adopt that mentality, to take on that agency or control over your own life, you kind of have to drop all your other opinions. And I think people are so afraid to admit they may have been wrong. And it's like, well, you weren't wrong. We've all made choices up to this point, doing the best with what we have. And it's almost like, particularly after something as divisive as the pandemic, whether it was the vaccines, the lockdowns, whatever it was, people were so divided and continue to be, that there's like this fear around changing your mind. And it's like, well, ultimately you're the one that's losing out if you don't adopt a different mindset around something or a different choice around something, because the opportunities are out there. And I just wanted to, there's a passage here that I pulled up that I highlighted when I was rereading. So, and this is very similar to that series I was talking about years and years set in 2030 UK. It's not Alexa. They gave it a different name in the series. I can't remember what it was, but essentially what we currently know as Alexa, and mine's next to me, so she might be about to do something. I hope she doesn't. There's a passage here. Alexa, can you turn the lights on? So you're at home with your wife. She just lit up mine. Sorry, distracted. My lights might come on now. They're already on. Alexa, can you turn the lights on? I say to the ever-present neon red light that floats around my apartment, ceaselessly recording my daily activities. Now, again, people are going to think, oh, that's a bit extreme. But it will get there if we let it, right? So is that, yeah? You're nodding.
Yeah, well, I mean, Alexa already basically records everything. There's, I forget what it was. There was this, was it a Ring doorbell? It was something like that, which is owned by Amazon. I forget what happened, but yeah, someone said something that either the Ring or their Alexa considered was racist. It wasn't meant to be recording. It wasn't on, but it noticed that it was, and there were some repercussions for the guy. And I'm so upset that I can't remember the article, but like that thing's recording nonstop. And I don't have any Alexas in my house because they freak me out. I mean, I still have Siri, and I know that she's probably listening to me, but I've tried to live without an iPhone. It's really hard.
Yes. Well, and you've got in here, you've changed it to Vic phone, right? So Victoria phone. Is that something you came up with thinking in the most extreme case, you wouldn't have an iPhone, because you then reference later on someone elsewhere in another city shows you something on what I think is called an iPhone, because they've all been replaced with these, I guess, government mandated devices. Is that the idea?
Like a Huawei. It's basically like a Huawei or something. You know what I mean? So it's got like the government spyware on it. It's, you know, you can only access certain websites. And I mean, I don't see that we're that far off that. I mean, that's what happens in China.
And I think this is what's so important, and this is where it starts crossing over into the Bitcoin conversation, the CBDC conversation. So I'll finish reading this passage. So you've got Alexa following you around there, ceaselessly recording my daily activities. And Alexa says, "Lighting not available," she responds in her mechanical, almost human voice. Alexa continues, "Thought crime committed by resident at 13:62 p.m. today." 13:62. I've only just noticed. That's not a typo. Is that you being silly? Have we created more time in an hour?
No, that's a reference to 1984, and I forget what it is, but there's something in 1984 where they have like another hour, or there's something about
this is
the
the
time
George
in
Orwell
1984.
1984.
Yeah, correct. So it's a reference to that.
And I haven't actually read that. Tell me what happens. So how do we end up with 62 minutes in an hour or more?
I don't know. I can't remember the reference.
Okay, fine. We'll all go and read 1984.
Yeah, someone has to read it and find out.
Doesn't matter. I've zoomed in on that without realizing it was
there. No, that's right. It's a really subtle reference, so it wouldn't jump out at you. Okay. Keep going.
Thought crime committed by resident at 13:62 today. Resident improperly judged a birthing parent who was being inclusive by letting its child play with used drug paraphernalia. Social credit score is now too low for electricity use. So it's hilarious, it's jarring, it's extreme. Some people would probably poo-poo it like, you know, don't be ridiculous, we'll never get there. But as you've just, you know, detailed, illustrated, spelt out, it's possible, right? Nothing's impossible when we are kind of living in this semi-matrix world. And that's not the words of a conspiracy theorist. That's the truth. That's the facts, right? Our data is everywhere.
Yeah, well, the technology exists for it. They do it in China. And that's just because they do it in China is not to say that they would do it here, but the technology definitely exists for it. But I think there's already an element of social credit score at play in Australia and the West, right? So that's what the whole cancel culture thing is about. If you think the wrong opinion, you don't have a job anymore. And that is almost a more brutal form of justice than our actual justice system, which has, requirements for evidence and procedural fairness and all those sorts of things. Whereas someone can maybe make an accusation against you, or you can say the wrong thing online, and then your job's gone. And once your job's gone, I mean, that would have impacts on your family and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really brutal form of, I guess, a form of social credit that currently exists at the moment.
Now, are you someone who has swallowed the orange pill and going big on Bitcoin? If you are considering putting an amount of money into this world-changing asset and are feeling like you won't sleep at night without a little one-on-one guidance, you are in the right place. Look no further than the incredible team of amazing humans at the Bitcoin Advisor, who I've had the pleasure of meeting in person a few times now. Entrusted with managing over $1 billion, that's a B, not an M, $1 billion in assets they've been responsible for. The team at the Bitcoin Advisor have been serving clients since 2016 with buying, securing, very, very important. If you don't know what that means, you definitely need their help. Buying, securing, and or managing your Bitcoin on a bigger scale, particularly if you have family who don't know what to do in the event that you very sadly get hit by a bus. You need these guys' help, trust me. I will admit, understanding Bitcoin from scratch is not easy. It is overwhelming, and you'll be shortcutting hours of reading and learning and podcasts and articles and all the things if you try and do all this yourself, especially if you try and do it in a hurry when the price starts taking off and the FOMO kicks in. I keep saying that because it's true. You're human. It will. So book in a chat with these guys before that happens. Tell Peter and Andy that I sent you, and they will take extra special care of you. So just head over to bugetpaid.com/BTC advice. That's bugetpaid.com BTC ADVICE. bugetpaid.com/BTC advice. Hope that makes sense. This will be in the show notes.
Yeah, and for someone who's in the judicial system, representing our judicial system, we started to talk about this before. Feel free to cut it off at any point if you don't feel comfortable talking about it. But, you know, you're out there. It wouldn't be hard for people to figure out if you are using a pen name, if you are, you know, you're risking, as a lot of people who are starting to get passionate about, okay, this is enough. There's a lot of people in the Bitcoin space, you know, making noise who have now put their entire future reputation on the line by speaking out about these things. And you and I started to talk about a topic that is what woke me up massively during the pandemic, which was the Novak Djokovic situation that played out in Australia for the Australian Open. For those that weren't paying attention, he refused to get vaccinated, wasn't allowed into Australia. Then they argued that he should be allowed into Australia. Then the Supreme Court, or not, it's not called the Supreme Court here. What is it in Australia?
The federal court.
The federal court basically said he can stay. But all of a sudden, he was turned around and sent home because the government essentially stepped in and overruled the court system. That is, am I right? If that's a very potted version of what happened?
Yeah, that's broadly what happened. So
yeah,
I don't know exactly the series of events, but what happened was Djokovic had an exemption. So at the time, to come to Australia, I think you needed to be vaccinated, and he had what he thought was a valid exemption
yes,
to that rule. So he would be allowed in, and he had a visa. And then when he landed, I don't know, something happened when he landed, but what happened in the end was that the immigration minister cancelled his visa under some wide-ranging discretionary powers that they have under that act. And once it was cancelled, Djokovic applied to the federal court for a review of that decision, which is something you can do, right? So if a government officer exercises some power that they have, you can apply to the court to review that, and they review it to see if it was a reasonable decision to make or if it was made lawfully. And I think it went to the federal court first, a single judge of the federal court, and then he lost, I guess, or maybe he won. Anyway, it was appealed up to the full court, which is a couple more judges in the federal court. And that was actually, I thought that was crazy as well, right? So I read the decision as part of, I'm doing a master's degree through Melbourne Uni at the moment in law, and we read that as part of a civil procedure subject. And the lecturer was kind of like, well, do you think that that was a reasonable decision for the court to make? And I have my own opinions about it, but I prepared for this because I don't want to ruin my legal career by criticising the full court of the Federal Court of Australia. So there's this academic, Maria O'Sullivan, who works at Monash, or she worked at Monash when she published this article in 2022, which is in the Admin Law Journal. I looked her up. She's got a PhD. I think she works at Deakin now. But anyway, she reached the same conclusion that I did about that decision. And basically, the federal court made a legally correct decision.
okay.
So that's what happened. Like, so to the letter of the law, what they did was fine, except she criticizes this decision and I criticize it as well, because the rationale used by the court was that, actually, I might even just read a little bit of this. As I've argued elsewhere, while the federal court's decision may be viewed as legally justified given the breadth of the cancellation powers in the Migration Act, it's concerning that the court could find no legal error in the reasoning of the minister about public perceptions of Mr. Djokovic. The basis of the minister's findings was that it was sufficient to show that Mr. Djokovic is an iconic sports star who is perceived as being anti-vaccination and therefore may foster anti-vax sentiment in Australia. Put simply, it does not appear to me to be rational to determine that an individual's eligibility to remain in a country upon the perception or actions of others. And so the court then goes to talk about the fact that he might influence young and impressionable people. And then this professor says, it's not self-evident to me that a tennis star is likely to influence young people, in particular in this context. So, I mean, yeah, it raises concerns about like how wide-ranging the discretionary powers of the government are. And then it also highlights how hamstrung I think the judiciary is to step in and stop that if they wanted to. I mean, I thought that decision was crazy. They thought that the mere presence of a world-level athlete that was not vaccinated would be a threat to the good order of Australia. And so when you put it in that context, you can see that how that could be weaponized or used in a whole range of circumstances.
Yeah.
If a person comes into Australia that doesn't share the views of the government at the time, that is a threat to the good order of Australia, and then they should be removed. And if it's not the immigration minister, it could be a different minister with other powers. So yeah, I found that concerning, very concerning.
I 100% agree, especially if the argument is young people, which at that point, ironically, the timing was, and I was vaccinated, doesn't matter. At the time, it just felt a bit too convenient that it was around that time that they were trying to roll out the vaccines for younger people. You know, everyone else. Anyway, let's move on from that. But yeah, interesting take from someone who is, you know, studying, reading, writing law. You're in the industry. It's another industry now that I think so many people, like the medical industry, are starting to feel a bit conflicted with, well, I entered this for the reasons I entered this industry, apart from maybe a great career move as a salary, is wanting to serve people or wanting to live a life of service to other human beings. And then all of a sudden the goalposts get moved and it's like, well, hang on a minute, my personal views on how best to serve someone is now being hamstrung by these new so-called rules. And it's why social media is becoming so divisive. And I think it's why somewhere like Twitter or X is where a lot of people are turning for other views, because Elon Musk has made this commitment. Well, time will tell if he holds on to it, but that no one side of an argument is going to be shut down, whereas clearly on other platforms it did. So fair play, putting yourself out there, pen name or not. And there's another issue you touched on in the book, which I just wanted to, for selfish reasons, as someone who's had the occasional fertility challenge of late, you comment on, well, you make quite a few references to the environment or climate change being this catastrophic fear-mongering mainstream media tactic that I totally agree with, having gone down those rabbit holes. There's no question that the environment has had impact from humans that we need to be aware of and do our bit. Is it as catastrophic as we're made to think sometimes? Perhaps not. And one of those issues is population decline and, you know, people not having children. And you comment on that a couple of times through wondering if we will ever be permitted to produce a child together, because in this 2029 world that you're describing, your wife is being used as a breeder. That was jarring.
Yeah.
But again, it's kind of Handmaid's Tale for anyone who's read that, or I did it at school.
So what does it even mean to be you and get paid? Well, in short, it's embracing the opportunity available online to earn a living around your life, and not the other way around. I'll give you a moment to let that sink in. Ready? In other words, to build your own dreams instead of someone else's. And for me, it took the sudden and unexpected loss of a very close family member back in 2013 before I took that kind of cliche statement seriously. It was a line in the sand moment where I decided I was going to do whatever I had to do to build something of my own, to find freedom from the unfulfilling world of commuting and corporate slavery for good. And that decision put me on a completely different life path. And I can tell you from experience that it is even simpler to do today than it has ever been before. So if you've been inspired by anything you've heard on this podcast, nothing is stopping you from doing the same. when you learn to turn your existing skills, knowledge, passions, and interests into income streams online. And if you don't believe me, check out the episode number 18 with my long-term friend and mentor, Stuart Ross. And we're not talking about some half-assed part-time side hustle here, my friend. I am talking about drastically changing the way you think about and earn money in today's modern world. So sign up for Modern Wealthy, our 7-day fast start training series, which includes a downloadable ebook and your best life blueprint. And I will be there to cheer you on with monthly coaching calls and give you a bit of a kick up the bum. So head over to bugetpaid.com/launch. That's bugetpaid.com/launch.
Well, the premise, it's the same outcome as Handmaid's Tale, but due to a different set of circumstances, or I guess the opposite side of the political spectrum. I haven't read Handmaid's Tale. I watched some of the series, but not much. But the gist that I gather from it is that the evil patriarchy forces women to be breeders, I guess, is the vibe,
and not necessarily with their own husbands, because you've made some mistakes with your spending and therefore you don't have a social credit score high enough to have a child with your own wife, taking it to the extreme potentially.
Yeah. Well, and that part of the book was inspired by another news article that I can't quite recall, but basically encouraging women in California to be foster parents for gay couples. And I just wonder if it gets, obviously this is stretching things out right to the extreme, but is there a time when the premier or the dictator says, well, straight people, you've had your run. Now it's the time for gay people. They need you to step up to the plate and donate your body. And that actually is the story of that graphic novel kind of happening in the background, which it's not explicit. So I don't know.
It doesn't need to be explicit. I think just throwing paragraphs out there like that, and I've highlighted them. I just discovered how to highlight an ebook recently. It's very exciting. I think it's jarring enough, and then you've got your career in there. You're working in a bank offering loans. The building that you work in has got BlackRock emblazoned across it because no one owns their homes anymore, or any real estate, because these investment firms or asset management firms have bought everything. That's happening. That's not fake. That is real. These investment funds own subsidiary companies that literally sweep in a recession and buy up real estate in bulk. I've only learned this through going down the money and Bitcoin rabbit hole. And you're talking about processing loans for citizens who have run out of universal basic income. That's just so frightening. It's not true. And the universal basic income is obviously being issued on a central bank digital currency that is controlled and surveilled. This stuff's coming, if we're not careful. The interest rates we charge on the loans vary based on race and gender in accordance with the 2029 State Strategy for Equity and Inclusivity. This way, the historical impacts of white supremacy and colonialism, which are still felt today, can be properly addressed. Like, I say it in jest, and it's ironic again that today's the referendum for the yes vote, but it's just the root cause is, to me, money. Or the monetary system. And I know you've gone down that rabbit hole. You're not necessarily a hardcore Bitcoiner on the philosophical side of things, but I can definitely see that you're coming around to that. So let's start moving into the get paid or the money side of what I like to talk about. From your experience, you have a buy me a coffee link. I think that's the first time I discovered you. I think I bought you a coffee. When did you introduce that? Or because were you uncomfortable just charging for a paid newsletter, or maybe that's further down the line? When did you realize, maybe I'll throw it out there that people can reward me for my efforts?
I don't know. I just thought it would be a good idea. It seemed like an easier ask than a subscription. I just personally hate subscriptions as well. I don't sign up to any subscriptions. Any product that needs a subscription, I don't buy, just because from a money management point of view, I think subscriptions are a rort. And a personal finance point of view, that's a tip for everyone: delete all subscriptions.
Because you forget you've got them, or
Well, that's the thing. You forget you've got them, and then some things they force you into a subscription model, and it's like, well, no, I don't want you to have a portion of my paycheck every week. I want my paycheck, and I'll decide if your product's good, I'll buy it, and I'll have it.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to sign you up to subscription. It really fries me. Did you see like BMW? I think is now charging a subscription for heated seats. So if you want heated seats in your BMW, you have to pay every month. And that's what freaks me out about this. Yeah.
That sounds like a really poor application of the business model that is subscriptions. I mean, I don't have a problem with subscription. I think if you see the value in something and you want to pay for it every month, and there is like, so for example, I think it's part of a very smart business model. So like Tesla, for example, they've grown that out now. They've got the cars, they've got the charging points, and you can have a subscription to make sure you've got unlimited charging or unlimited this, that, and the other, which I think if you are bought into their brand, if you're bought into the product, the convenience of that is probably worth having. So I don't have a problem with it if it's applied smartly, or having, like Dollar Shave Club, huge business. And it's just it's the convenience of, I don't have to think about that. My razors are going to turn up when I need them, or Nespresso coffee pods have it. They're going to turn up when I need them. So there's a balance, but I do get what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I don't have no subscriptions. I got my Audible and stuff, but I think I just went once. I went to buy like a fitness strap or something, I think, and the only option was to have it as a subscription. I was just like, no, I don't want this. Yeah, was that it? Yeah, it must be. Yeah.
Fair enough. So you got the coffee going. You're on Substack. They have a paid newsletter option. I think you'll be surprised. I mean, maybe see how you go. If you don't feel comfortable, it won't work, because people pick up on that, I think. But
well, no. So people can do like a monthly sign up on my Buy Me a Coffee and on Substack, and people do.
Okay.
I just wanted to offer the option. It's like, if you put out writing and you think it's good, send me something if you want. I thought that was just an easier ask than saying sign up for something. And plus, if someone signed up for something every month, then I've got a monththly obligation. And I don't know if I want the monthly obligation at this stage.
The feeling that you've got to produce extra for the people that are paying. Yeah, I get that. It's pressure. It's like, oh, I like my freedom. I want to change my mind. You just made me think of something then. Oh, yes. So that's the beauty of something like Nostra, right? For anyone listening who's not a Bitcoiner or hasn't, or who possibly is into Bitcoin or knows what Bitcoin is, but doesn't know what Nostra is. So Nostra is built on the Lightning Network, which is essentially a layer on top of Bitcoin, which means we have social media where every interaction is sending bits of Bitcoin, essentially. And it's the new internet. It's people keep referring to Web3 as this, and it's like, no, it's Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the only one that's decentralized enough. That's why it's taking so long to get it right, because the foundation layer has to be right. But essentially, we're all communicating, and I can't get Nostra to work for me. I think it's a long way off being mainstream adopted. But when it does, it's going to go bang, because people are going to start to realize that financially incentivizing these things is the only way that people are going to care. And Michael Saylor talks about this, if you introduce the monetary penalty or the monetary incentive, you can't suddenly create an app that sends millions of bots out DMing everybody, because it's going to cost too much. So I'm super glad that you're on Nostra and ahead of that, because that's probably the most authentic way to get paid for your creation.
Can I just say, Nostra blew my mind. When I started using it, it absolutely blew my mind. I was like, this has to be how things will work. It was just so frictionless, and so I compare it to Buy Me a Coffee on Twitter. And for someone to buy me a coffee, they have to they have to click the thing, then they go to this external website, then they put their card details in, they get charged like, I don't know how many fees. And depending on what currency they want to buy in as well, there's like a currency exchange fee, and it's just clunky. And then on Nostra, I just click a button and I send some sats to someone. There's some guy on there who actually helped me set everything up. He said, I noticed that you're on there, but I think you're obviously like struggling with the learning curve. I was like, yes, I am. So he sent me a message, and he sent me this whole like instruction booklet on how to set it up properly. And I was like, that's awesome. And I just sent him some stuff, because that's what you can do, and it's so easy.
Where was
he? I love it.
Where in the world was he?
I think he's Australian. So he found me on Twitter. So I think he's in Sydney or something, but I'm not sure. But I know that I've got people on there from America or whatever, and there's no exchange rate. It's just easy.
because it's a universal currency, right? Or it's the currency of the internet, which is universal. Yeah, I can see how Nostra's going to go bang, but I haven't had the frictionless experience that you have, but I'm probably doing something wrong. So I do chip away at it when I have time, but I'm glad that you're on there. I'm glad that you're being rewarded in that way, because it is genius. And that was another one of those moments where Bitcoin just makes sense. Awesome. Good for you. So there was one thing you mentioned as well. That's right. You said that there was a point not too long ago where your bank account got hacked. So that was a moment for you where you realized money in the bank is not your own. Tell me about that. Remind me what happened.
So I think, I always knew what was going on with the money in the bank. I knew that I knew that they didn't have my money there, and I was kind of fine with it because I didn't have a huge amount of money. And it never actually impacted me personally. But I think recently I read or in the last few years, you've seen more and more newspaper articles of people getting debanked. And that stressed me out. And then in December last year, my bank account got hacked, and I went through the process of trying to get money out of that account. And I was just like, I couldn't get it out. It took days.
Just quickly, when you say your bank account got hacked, what did that look like? How did you know what happened? So you go to log in.
I think it was my card. I think it was my card that got hacked. And it was my bank card that I used. So it wasn't a credit card or anything like that. It was actually linked to the account that I have my cash in. And I don't know. I just logged in there one day and I was looking through my transactions and I saw transactions that weren't mine. And I was like, oh no, what's going on?
Okay. So money had gone already?
Yeah, money had gone. And I called the bank and they said, we'll get onto it. But it might take a couple of weeks and we can't guarantee what's going to happen. And in my mind, I was just like, what the hell? And I canceled the card right away, but this person had spent my money. My money was already gone. And I didn't know what else they had access to, if they had access to the account. So I tried to get my money out of there, which was incredibly difficult. They put roadblocks up every step of the way. I went down to the bank and tried to get money out. I think it was like a Saturday or something. So I was like, I don't have that bank card, so I'll transfer it to an account that I have at another bank and then withdraw it from that ATM. But you can only transfer a couple grand a day. I was just like, how do I get this out? Yeah. So I went down, a few rabbit holes, and I have got most of my money out of the banks because it gave me too much anxiety.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting, just you touching on that. I had an email. I've got various accounts with various places because of just wanting to diversify. You can end up quite paranoid. I don't think it's necessary to be as paranoid as perhaps Bitcoiners are, but when you get this passionate, it's like, no, it's safe. But I had an email from one of the big banks and I tweeted it, so if anyone wants to know which bank it was, feel free, saying that they're increasing the interest rate they're offering for balances over $250,000. And I was thinking, why would they do that? Because, I only learned in the last few years that if you've got a savings account, if you're, and some people do, if they've sold a property or, come into wealth and they've got to put their cash somewhere whilst they think about if they're going to invest it. Some people might want to sit on the cash. Over $250,000, you're not protected. There's no government insurance policy in place. So if the bank goes bust, which they can, they're businesses, that could be going up in smoke and you're only protected up to $250,000. So why would banks be now offering an incentive to keep money with them over that amount? That freaks me out. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just putting it out there. It just made me think, wrong think, as you would say. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Don't ask the questions. I have no idea why. But I don't like it. And I don't like that, they're all changing their policies now so that they can just basically rip away your banking services if they deem necessary. They're also tracking the carbon of your purchases. I think Suncorp's the only bank doing that at the moment, and you can opt into it, so it's not a necessary thing, but you can kind of see where that goes. So if the bank can track and record all of your transactions easily, which they can, and then they're also tracking how much what your carbon footprint is, then it's very easy for a government to say, well, you can only consume X amount of carbon a month. And then once you've gone over that limit, your bank account shuts down.
Well, and I think if anyone wants to see where that ends up, that, read the book, go to John's bio or go subscribe to Substack and download the PDF. It's 50 something pages. It's not very long.
It's not long, and it's also going to be going behind a paywall in a couple of weeks, so people can get it while it's free. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Good call to action there, John. Very good.
Yes.
Good. Cool. Well, I think you've done a really good job of, it might be fast fiction, as you call it. We need to optimize your bio. I don't think it sells you enough. I'm just looking at it here. I write fast fiction is nowhere near compelling enough for people to look at what you've done. Going behind a paywall in a couple of months would probably be more compelling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so interesting. You've done a lot. You've learned a lot. You've taken this turn. You've made that kind of leap of faith, putting yourself out there. Love it. I love it. I think more people need to sort of start taking this stuff seriously. It might sound extreme, but we're closer to that sort of, I don't know what the word is, dystopian world than perhaps we think. And I'm all about people just doing what's best for them and creating their own world. There's lots of opportunities out there to do that rather than get sucked into the fear of it. But it's good to acknowledge the potential of what it could turn into, so that you have options. And Bitcoin is a big part of that, having money outside of that system, giving you options to participate in this community of, or this Jeff Booth calls it the parallel system, right? Which is just so much more healthy when it comes to humans interacting. So I love that you're on the Nostra train. I didn't realize you were quite that far along in your Bitcoin journey, but good for you. Well done. Okay, so lastly, I like to wrap up with just a couple of little questions as to what advice you would give your younger self. And it's very broad, it's the Be You, Get Paid thing. So what advice would you give your younger self about, I guess, being you, being authentic, all those kind of things? Anything that comes to mind under that umbrella? And then a piece of advice that you would give your younger self about money, not necessarily the technical, like smart investing, or it can be, but it could be just, what did you make money mean? Anything that comes to mind that you would tell a younger version of you.
Okay, so what I would tell a younger version of myself would be to stop drinking and doing drugs a lot sooner than I did.
Right. Okay.
Yes. I think that there are some wasted years there.
Mm-hmm.
And also...
Why?
Well, I don't know. I just drank a lot. And I did a lot of drugs, and it hindered it stopped my progress, basically, is all I can say. And once I stopped doing that, everything got a whole lot easier, and I got a whole lot more productive, and I was able to do a lot more in a day. And I just don't think you can think when your brain is foggy. I mean, alcohol's poison. It destroys your brain cells. And a lot of the time, I think alcohol is actually the most insidious drug of them all, because it's so socially accepted. And when you're out, people say, oh, it's Saturday night, just have one drink. Oh, we're celebrating, just have a couple drinks or whatever. But it adds up over time. And every day that you're not spending doing what you want to do, you kind of get further away from your goals. And you get further away from the person that you want to be. And if you leave that go for too long, you get anxiety, you get existential angst. And I personally found it very stressful. So that's what I would say about that. And maybe also just like have confidence in the things that you say. For a long time, and I think I said this to you before, for a long time I didn't have the confidence to say out loud what I wanted to say, or I didn't have confidence to publish any writing or anything like that. Or it's not even that I didn't have the confidence, it's just that I didn't want to be faced with backlash, or I didn't want to I thought that it was best to keep what I thought to myself. And I think that's almost an Australian thing, because Australians have that, like, oh, don't rock the boat, don't...
Tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, tall poppy
Yeah.
syndrome as well. And it just got to a point, and this was only 6 months ago, and I was just like, fuck, I can't keep it in anymore. I just got to say it. I just got to put it all out. And now all I'm doing is writing all this stuff because it just has to, like, I can't keep it in because it actually is corrosive to your insides if you keep what you want to say in for too long.
So true.
Yeah.
It's corrosive to your insides if you keep it in for so long. I love that. That's really good.
Yeah.
That's going in my best bits episode whenever that's coming.
Yes,
love it. And I love that it was only 6
Greatest
months
hits.
ago and you're 30 years of age. Like that's the real epidemic of our time, right? How many years it takes the average human to get to this point of going, why not? And
It's
that's
insane. And do you know
I'm
what?
here for it.
I know, and I've got this app on my phone. So I use the Day One app, which is a diary app. You pay about $60 a year for it. I've been using it since
That's
2014.
a subscription, John.
Yes, I know. It is a subscription, but it's so
It's
worth it.
valuable. There you go.
Yes, it's the best. It's the best money I've ever spent, and I've been writing in it since 2014. And I've been writing before that, obviously. But I see that all this stuff from what is that, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, and I'm like, why was I not saying this out loud instead of inside of this for so long? So,
Brilliant.
anyway, there's that. And what was the other thing? So,
Money, anything to do with money, what you thought about money, what you did with your money, anything, whatever comes to mind first.
You have to be more careful with money than you think because it's harder to get than you think, and it's easier to spend than you think it is. I think I grew up in a family. We weren't like super rich or anything like that, but my parents always had like, nice things, were earning money. And so I just had I was under the false impression that I would just be wealthy that it would just happen.
Comfortable.
That I would always just be comfortable. And then, I don't know, I never actually felt comfortable until I sat down and actually just looked at what I was spending each month. So that's when all the subscriptions went and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. You just have to keep track of your money.
Yeah.
And then, anything that's excess, just invest in something that will make more money. And then that's fine. Spend less than you earn and invest the rest.
Seems simple, doesn't it? But I think, and I knew that intellectually. But it was, I guess, the question I came to before going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, but then I got down that rabbit hole as a result of asking the question was why? Why do you need to invest the rest? Why do you constantly need to be squirreling away money that will grow in the future because prices will continue to go up in infinitum or whatever the term is? Because why? And it wasn't until my mum, I told this story many times, it wasn't until my mum lost her husband and my grandmother, her mum, and was down to the three of them were under one roof, and her one pension wasn't enough for her to live, even with no mortgage, like with a roof over her head. And I was like, why? That's so screwed up. This woman's worked really hard her whole life. She's done everything you're supposed to do. She's been a dutiful citizen, never done anything wrong. Never got anything from a divorce. It's like, why is that amount of money that you're supposed to have be getting back at that point when you stop working not enough? And so it's that question, why? But why? And I think as a lawyer, you're probably naturally inclined to ask those questions, and now you're doing a really good job of asking them out loud. So I'm glad you reached that point. Tell us where the best place is for people to find you. I will link whatever you want in the show notes, but where would you prefer people find you first?
Twitter at nonestlex, NONESTLEX. I've got a Substack, which is JOHNGODDARD at substack.com, and on Nostra as well, which I think you can find at John Goddard, or I've got a link to my Nostra in your Twitter bio.
I've just found that, So bio.site, SITE/John Goddard. There you go. That's probably the best one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's got it all. Everything's there. Yeah, it's all there.
Everything's there. I like that you're using Strike. You're more of a Bitcoiner than I thought you were. I'm pleased about this. Just because when we were talking once before, you were talking about buying a house and you'd sold some Bitcoin to buy a property, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem. Do what you want to do. But I'm glad you're studying hard on Bitcoin and using it as well as hodling it.
I'm fully on the train. I've started that book that you recommended to me, The Price of Tomorrow. I also started the Bitcoin Standard. I mean, I think we said this, like I've known about Bitcoin for ages and always thought it was cool, but didn't realize the practical importance of it until my bank account got hacked and I needed to store my own money. And then, the rest of the rabbit hole, inflation, government money, and
It's personal. It's very personal.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect place to finish. It's like, until it personally affects you, you don't really do the work. But unfortunately, we can only keep having these conversations and producing content like we both are, and hoping that people get there before they need it. But thank you so much. That was a really different angle on all the things I'm trying to share and spread the word about. So keep it up. Love your work.
No worries.
And, we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me.
Hello, my friend. As someone who's not the best at finishing the things they start, thank you so much for making it to the end of this podcast. I hope you found it helpful. Maybe it piqued your curiosity on something new, or even just made you smile for a few seconds. If any of those things apply here, then all my regular tech challenges and tantrums are well worth it to get this to you. If you heard anything at all that you think could help just even one other human being, there's a couple of things you can do that I would really and truly appreciate. Firstly, you can follow or subscribe wherever you're listening. On most podcast platforms, this is usually just a case of hitting a follow button or a plus sign on the main show page. This means you'll never miss an episode, which is hopefully a win-win for us both. Secondly, if you're feeling really generous, you can leave me a 5-star rating or review wherever you're listening. And lastly, feel free to share an episode with a friend on social media with any thoughts, feedback, suggestions, or even criticism. It's okay, I can take it. Just tag me using the handle @AmyTaylorSays to make sure I see it and can thank you personally. Any or all of these things genuinely mean more human beings see and hear these conversations. So again, thank you for being here and helping me with my mission with Be You Get Paid, to help as many people as possible know themselves, know money, and be happy. See you next time.